Hello, everyone. I'm your virtual guide today on this virtual tour in Ficardo village. I welcome you to this small village, which is situated in the southeast part of Trudas Mountains in Pitsilia area and about 40 kilometers from our capital, Nicosia. We're on the mountains, as you can see. Blue sky, clear air. We're at the square of the village, and right in front of us, we've got the village, we've got the monument of Yannaku, which means the restaurant of Yannaku. As we come from Nicosia, we're coming from the left-hand side of the restaurant as we face it in front of us. And it's a very nice drive from our capital to come here and find yourselves in the square of this small village, the village of Ficardo. Actually, the restaurant that we have in front of us now is a monument which has been settled by the local Department of Antiquities, a protected monument, just like the rest of the monuments here, the rest of the houses here in this village. As we move now to the right-hand side, you may see on the left-hand side of this little square, the monument and the flags of Cyprus and Greece above this monument, a monument which has been dedicated to 4 young men, 4 soldiers who were killed during the troubles in 1974. That means the year that we were invaded by the Turkish troops. And we can see now the monument on the volcanic rocks in front of us. Above that, we can also see the big announcement for the Christmas festival, which has been organized here in the village for 8 years now and attracts a lot of people. If we see now a little bit to the right-hand side, we can see 2 sets of stairways. The first one is leading us to the top of this little hill. That means we will be at the altitude of about 1,000 meters high with beautiful views. And the second stairway is leading us to the primary school of the village. Well, in the past, the primary school of the village. And indeed, if we go back to the time of about 1930s, that means the time that Cyprus used to be under the British rule, this primary school was in use, and 29 pupils have been registered, 29 of every age. And at that time, the village had about 129 inhabitants. Not many, huh? 1 classroom only for all those 29 pupils of every age. Difficult times, huh? In those times, poor people, difficult as well because of the heavy winter, and every child, as I was told by the mayor of the village, every child was supposed to bring a log of wood every day so as to add it in the fireplace and keep them warm during the lessons. Nowadays, how many inhabitants do we have? Well, believe it or not, only 2 in the heart of this village. And in the surroundings of the village, in the immediate surroundings, there are 13 inhabitants, all of them retired. Now, I'm leading you to the church. From here, from the square, we can observe the roof of the Christian Orthodox Church dedicated to St. Paul and Peter. If we look at these roof tiles, we can see that they are horizontal, and this is a characteristic type of tiles that can be found in Cyprus, especially in our Byzantine churches, which exist only on Troodos Mountains. And as we go round now the church, we can see that in the courtyard, it is like a small cemetery. And indeed, some of the inhabitants of the village have been buried here through the years, the last one about the decade of 30s. Mind you, though, exactly a year ago, we have added the remainings which have been settled with the DNA method of the 4 young men, the 4 soldiers, to the ones have been referred a while ago. So an official burial ceremony took place here exactly a year ago. And above their grave, we can see the flag of Cyprus. We continue now our virtual tour in eFikardou village. And we're facing now the bell tower as well. You can see at the end of the church, the bell tower, which looks like new. And indeed, if you consider that the church goes back to the 17th century, as we see it nowadays, the bell looks very new. And indeed, it was added in the middle of the 19th century. What happened? During the time that were under the Turkish Ottomans, that means late 16th to late 19th century, all the bell towers had been destroyed. And an official decision was taken exactly in 1950 for permitting again the construction of the bell towers. And the first one was added at the Church of St. Lazarus in Larnaca town. And 6 years later, the bell tower was added here at the Church of St. Paul and Peter. The 2 saints were considered to be the ones who have really supported Christianity and in general the church in the world. We're entering now the church. 3 little steps are leading us to the interior of this Christian Orthodox church. And we could see on the east side the iconostasis. Icon is ikona in Greek, like the icon of Jesus, the icon of Virgin Mary. And stasidi in Greek means a stand. So it's the stand that holds the icons, iconostasis. And exactly opposite, we can see the gynekonitis. Opposite the iconostasis, we can see the gynekonitis, which means is the place for the women. Gynekonitis, gyneka means a woman. And gynekonitis is the place, here it is now, made of sculpture wood, as an upper floor, let's say, as a mezzanine floor, which was used in the old days by the women. This is a characteristic we can see at the time that we used to be under the Turkish rule, under the Turkish Ottomans. Gynekonitis. And now lower we can see the seats for the people who attend the mass on the right and left hand side of the church. Skamnos, as we call them in Greek. And if we look carefully, we can see that they are very narrow. This indicates that the people of eFikardou village used to be small, that means not tall, and very thin as well. The mayor of the village, Mr. Sophocles, has got really a very good sense of humor, and he has said to me once that these seats are not wide enough for himself. Mind you that, though, the seat for the archbishop is really very wide and much more impressive than the rest of them. Nowadays, the village is in the region of Nicosia, but ecclesiastically is a part of the bishopric of Tamasou. You might be wondering if there's a mass here, and indeed there is one. The bishopric of Tamasou is sending us a priest once a month. Every 3rd Sunday, you can be sure that there is a mass here, and a lot of people are attending the mass. And after the mass, they all make their way to the nearby restaurant of Yanakou, the one that we have already observed, and a coffee is offered to everybody with the compliments of the village. Let's continue now our virtual tour, and let's follow the narrow street, the narrow cobbled street, so as to explore this village. The village, which was, I'm afraid, deserted. If we go back to 1960, not even 10 people used to live here. And it was actually in 1986 that representatives of the local Department of Antiquities, together with the Leventis Foundation, came up here. They appreciated the value of this village, and after their efforts, the restoration started of the monuments of the houses of this village. So two of these houses are a part of the scale A. That means they belong to the Department of Antiquities, and they are under the direction of the local Department of Antiquities, and the rest of the houses are in the scale B, which means they are privately owned, but the owners cannot do any changes on these monuments unless if they have the approval of the government, and especially the Department of Antiquities. We follow the cobble street, and you can see that it is rough. We're not in a city. Oh no, we're on the mountains. The people here had used whatever it was available in the surroundings for building the streets, for building their houses. And we're entering now one of the two houses which are used as museums. We're actually entering the house of Achilleus Demetri, one of the two houses which has won the the Europa Nostra Prize, a prize which is given to important, authentic monuments in the European Union. We are still outdoors, a covered area to provide shade. And here we are entering the actual house where everything was taken all in one room. That means the bed to sleep, the traditional chairs to sit down, the table to sit down and appreciate their meal. Also, the traditional baulo, as we call it in Greek, directly opposite us by the wall, where the woman of the house would keep all her linen inside. And according to the tradition, every time a daughter was born, the husband would have a cypress tree cut so as to create this chest, this baulo, as we call it in Greek, so as to keep inside the dowry of the daughter. And let's continue now. And let's leave the house, and we're again outdoors in this covered area. Look at the wooden beams, and amongst the wooden beams, the straw, which provides shade and cooler area in the surroundings of the house, outdoors and indoors. We enter the second room, and we can see that this was again a place where members of the family could sleep, eat, but also the women of the family would use the traditional loom for creating whatever they needed. The cover of the bed, as we can see there, little carpets, and also their clothes. Everything was made by hand here on the loom, either made of linen or cotton, even on silk. Actually, photographs of early 20th century witnessed the presence of silk in the village. The people were occupied really with the land, and there were farmers, and also with their animals like sheep and goats. The goods you see on the wall on the right, the goods are hanging on the wall, goods from the family of Maros. And we're now outdoors with a lovely view, the combination of the blue of the sky with the green of the vegetation, and also the brown of the materials of the village. A very harmonic blending of colors, a serenity everywhere. We leave now the house. We go down the steps. It's good always to wear comfortable shoes when we're visiting Fikardou village. And we are at a similar environment at the second house now, which has won the Europa Nostra prize, which is the house of Katsignoru. And we're on the roof actually of the house where there is a second level. And now we are going to enter this second level. A room, as you can see, with a Gothic architecture style entrance made of limestone, wooden doors. And we're inside now, we're indoors. And again, we can see that here the people used to live, used to sleep, used to eat, and the women used to use the loom within the same house. Everything was taking place in the same room. Not many comforts as nowadays, and not many demands either. Can you see what is hanging from the ceiling? This is what we call tapacha, using the Cypriot dialect. Tapacha. That means it's a sort of basket, let's say, hanging from the ceiling, where the woman of the house would keep her bread. She didn't have electronic appliances so as to create, so as to make the bread, so as to make the bread. But she would bake a bread once a week. So she was making a big quantity, and that's the place where she could have it kept away from the mouse, from the mice, but also away from the little children. Let's make our way down now, very narrow stairways, wooden ones, leading us to the lower floor, to the gadoi, as we call it, using the Cypriot dialect. And this is the place where the family would store their wine, their food, and the aromatic plants. Very impressive of the huge jars. Actually, these huge jars were made of clay. And the last one, which has been made in Cyprus, it is since 1972. We do not make them anymore. Huge jars made of clay. Someone would need minimum 40 days to have them made. And these are the jars where we would keep the juice of the wine, the juice of the grapes for the fermentation so as to become wine. In the smaller jars, we would keep the flour, other type of food, the meat as well in its own fat. And also would hang on the ceiling and on the wall the aromatic plants, plants which grow in the area. We hang them upside down, so we let them dry here in the basement, in the gadoi, so as to be able to use them any time of the year, either for making tea, a herbal tea, or for cooking. And going up the little step now and then coming down to a lower area where the patitiri used to be. Pato in Greek, that means I step on something. So this is the place where the family would step on the grapes so as to have the juice of the grapes. And of course, at the later stage, they applied here this sort of mechanism, and by pulling the metallic barrier, they would crush the grapes and they would create the juice. And then they would pour it into the huge jars that we have already seen so as to let it there for the fermentation. Now, what they used to do with what was left in this patitiri? Would bring it here in this corner. Can you see this metallic pot which is covered? This is a distillery. This is the place where we would put everything inside, and we would light up the fire, adding some water as well. So a lot of steam would be created, and it would travel, let's say, through this pipe into the jar made of clay next to that, where the temperature is much lower. So steaming coming into low temperature, it becomes liquid. And the result of that is coming from the lower part of the jar, the strong alcohol that we call nowadays zivania. Zivania. officially in the market 43 degrees Celsius. 43 degrees. And in the other corner, we can see the traditional oven, obviously for cooking the bread or also the meat. We use now the 2-3 steps to come out, and here we are in the countryside. We can see the horizon up to the end with the blue sky. Serenity everywhere, and a very nice smell as well, because in the past and up to nowadays still the plants, the aromatic plants still grow in the area. The trees like the cypress, the pine trees, and the aromatic plants like the rosemary, the thyme, which still grow in the area. We can see more details now on the architectural style of the way of building these houses. The base was made of big pieces of volcanic stones, stones found obviously on the mountains in the area and also in the river, which is lower, in combination with pieces of clay, piece of clay in second use, or even made especially for this reason, so as to be implemented together with the big volcanic stones, and that's the way that the construction can be more solid and it can resist to any difficulties through the years. And that's the reason, after all, these houses exist up to nowadays. Originally, the village goes back to the 15th century. And the houses that we see nowadays are mainly back to the 17th, 18th, and 19th century. And we can see now the upper part of the wall as well, which was made of plinthari, as we call it in Greek. That means it's man-made bricks made of the mud, which can be found at the lower place of the village. That means by the river, and stepped together with the straw, so as to, and then left outdoors under the sun for a certain period, so as to be cooked in brackets. And that's how we create these bricks up to nowadays. And with the proper restoration of the houses, they look as they used to be back to the medieval period, back to the 15th century. The roof now, we can give another detail about, we can see another detail about the roof. We can see the strong wooden beams which hold the roof together with the bamboo, and also the aromatic plants, just like the myrtle or the thorny barnet, which are medicinal plants, and they keep the insects away. What a label here. We can see the label indicating the letter E and the number 4. What does it mean? This indicates the existence of the European Nature Trail E4, a trail which starts from Gibraltar. It includes 10 countries in Europe, including Cyprus. Yes, from this village, we could use this nature trail, which is leading us, for example, south to Lasagna's village. And from there, we could be connected to this EU4 nature trail, and is leading us even lower up to the monastery of Macheras, dedicated to Virgin Mary. In total, this is a trail of almost 10 kilometers with beautiful views and very nice surroundings. On the other hand, we could also use another nature trail from eFikardou village. We could go towards the north up to the village of Kalochorio or Rinis, half of the distance than the other trail. That means almost 5 kilometers longer. And when we are very close to the end, that means close to καλό χωριό ορεινής. Excuse me. And when we reach the top of the north part of this trail, πέρα χωριό ορεινής, we are at a higher altitude. So from there we have spectacular views. And that is a very easy trail to be done. People could walk, use the nature, breathe the fresh air, and admire and take photographs of the beautiful flowers which grow in the area and the aromatic plants. And now let's enter the old wine press. Back in time, as our ancestors here used to produce the wine. Very large, huh? This one is not small like the one we have seen earlier at the house of Catsignoro. And no, here we're in a big linos, as we call it in Greek, a big wine press, because all the inhabitants of the village used to bring the grapes here, and they would literally throw them at the end of this room, as we can see, so as to have them crushed there. And from the opening in the middle, the juice would come out. It would run directly into the big jar. And from there, with the help of a gourd, which was used like a louche, let's say like a big spoon, it would be transferred to all the jars which exist here. Then we would cover these jars completely so the oxygen could enter the jar, and that's how we would let the juice for the fermentation. And finally, we would have the wine. We leave now the linos, the old wine press, and here we are outdoors to the bright light of the day in EFikardou village. We're always in the region of Troodos Mountains, southeast of Troodos Mountains, in the area of Pitsilia. And we can feel the fresh air. We can breathe the fresh air. It's calm everywhere. Only 2 inhabitants actually in the core of this village. Another 13 live in the immediate surroundings of the village. But even that, the village is making tremendous effort to attract people. And that's the reason they have every year the famous festival. That means the day that all the houses open to public and people could come and watch the locals continuing the tradition and doing the traditional professions, like making the wine, doing pottery, doing traditional embroideries, and using the loom, all the traditional professions. The people of the village here always used to be occupied with their animals and the land. And obviously, they used to produce a lot of products from the meat, from the milk as well, products we can still enjoy nowadays at the restaurant of Yanakou here in front of us, a restaurant which is open every single day for lunch and every evening for dinner from Monday to Saturday. Thank you all so much for joining us on this virtual tour, and we're looking forward to seeing you here at the village. Thank you all so much.